I teach people remotely assistive technology.
From JAWS to NVDA to VoiceOver screen readers.
What we try to focus on is really teach the fundamentals of VoiceOver.
From desktops to laptops to iPhones.
I would just say be as familiar with as many as you can, because you never know what you're going to need and what tool is going to work for you.
Two teachers doing what they do best, and that's teach. Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Today in the studio, we have two teachers of the blind, visually impaired. They volunteer and do contract work, all sorts of stuff. Good stuff for people who are new to blindness, beginning their journey, and want to learn assistive technology. In the studio, we have Cheryl McIntosh. Cheryl, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. And we have Sree Roy. Sree, how are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Good. Well, Cheryl, why don't you give a little introduction and what you do?
So I'm Cheryl McIntosh, as Jeff just mentioned. I am an assistive technology student instructor right now, but hopefully at the end of next month, I'll just be an assistive technology instructor and drop the student part. And I teach people remotely assistive technology. And then I do some volunteer work in my state through ACB. They have a chapter here, but it's like a tech committee. They do different trainings to help people in the state.
And Sree?
My name is Sree Roy. I am in Northern Virginia. I am a volunteer at two organizations. One is called iBUG Today. It's a nonprofit organization based in Houston, and I am a advanced member, and what I'm responsible for is two services that they provide. I'm the coordinator for the Jumpstart program. That is where someone who's new to VoiceOver on their iPhone, I pair up with a mentor and we offer that service. I'm also the facilitator on the iBUG Cafe. That is where I take an in-depth look at an app that's related to the iOS. I'm also a volunteer at the DC Public Library at the Martin Luther King for Center for Accessibility. I started a program, Intro to VoiceOver, probably around 2017, and we do about 4 sessions each year. They're about 10 weeks long, and I also support individuals who have questions about voiceovers in the DMV area.
Great. Cheryl, my first question goes to you. Screen readers. It's one of the most important things. I think that was the first thing that I learned when I went to training. There's a voice inside that computer. And I was so excited because I couldn't read the words anymore. And I didn't want to learn the computer because of that. And all of a sudden, it started talking to me. I think I had a deck talk device back then. And it just opened up the doors to it. What's the importance right now about screen readers and the technology that people are learning to help them access stuff for college and jobs?
I think the main thing about a screen reader is one, access, but also it provides you a lot of other things as well, like efficiency. You may be able to see it, like, for example, when I was losing my vision, it would take me 10 minutes to read a page. And by the time I got done, I had no idea what I had even read because I was so focused on seeing that I didn't retain any information. And so when I started using a screen reader, it changed that because now I can just do a say all command, read that in a few, 30 seconds or whatever, and move on with my day. Gives you a lot more time back.
And what kind of screen readers are you teaching mostly?
I mostly teach JAWS. I like working with JAWS, but I also can teach NVDA, and I haven't taught anybody yet, but eventually VoiceOver. Well, I have taught VoiceOver on the iPhone, but I haven't taught anybody on the Mac. That's my next goal. So hopefully I'll get a Mac student someday.
Are you addressing anybody using tablets?
Not really. Most people use like either the iPhone. I mean, some people do use the iPad. There's a lot of similarities with the iPhone and the iPad as far as like gestures and things. So
now, I know in high school, a lot of students use like a Braille note-taking device, and that's great for their access and all that. But as they head up towards the college level, what do you suggest that they do concerning like PCs and computers?
I would just say be as familiar with as many as you can, because you never know what you're going to need and what tool is going to work for you. Braille displays can definitely be paired to the PC pretty easily, and the Mac as well. In Tahoe, they just added a whole bunch of new Braille support, which is really awesome. So yeah, I mean, just take advantage of as much as you can. And especially, like I mentioned earlier, that efficiency, like that's what we need to do, things as fast as we can do them to keep up. And sometimes if we learn it the right way, like we can actually be faster than some people that use the mouse because they have to take their hand off the keyboard to go to the mouse and then come back to the keyboard. So if our hands remain on the keyboard and we can do it through the keyboard, we can do it pretty quickly.
I heard statistics, but they can be made up on the spot, really. But I heard that 90% of the businesses out there are going to be requiring you to at least access a computer, and you won't be able to be using your Braille note as your computer at that point. Refreshable Braille probably, but not as a computer.
Yeah, and I would think too, sometimes the formatting on a Braille note, you can't format it in the way that you may need to format it for like a work environment, like adding headings and, all that special styling and things like that. So that would be my concern with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just had 2 students on an interview and they're talking about scholarships, and both of them said that they opened up Excel spreadsheets to keep track of the applications that they're doing. And I was thinking, there you go. There's a use case right there.
Mm-hmm.
It was neat that they didn't even hem and haw about it, that they just knew that that was the tool that they were going to use and they had experience at it. So that's great that they're at that level of using that tool because it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, Excel is actually I teach Excel, and so it is one of those tools that you can use it for like a whole bunch of different things. I have a student who needs to track some medical information for her doctor. She has to write down different things each day, and I taught her how to do it in a spreadsheet, and they're all like, wow, this is really neat because now they can just look down the row or the column and see that information. So you never know when you're going to use these things. It may not seem like something you might need today, but down the road, you may never know.
It was just a little while ago, I actually explained algebra to my kids and I used it. And I was thinking to myself the same thing. I used it later in life.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those things where you use it and you never know that you're using it. Or, because like my daughter, I taught her geometry and, when we were going through it, she was just like, oh, she saw no relevance. Now, where she works, she actually has like a protractor and she's using geometry every day. So you never know. Might come in handy.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're working with students, whether they're older or younger or whatever, when it comes to technology, do you suggest to them certain technologies, or do you find out where they're headed, what they're going to be doing, and suggest a technology for them?
Yeah, so we use what they call the SET framework. So it's the student, environment, task, and tool. So you want to make sure you evaluate all of those things before you suggest a tool, because sometimes it's like, oh, here are these tools, use those, but maybe that doesn't fit the student's needs or what environment they're going to be working in. And we just had to do a case study, and this person didn't have internet access. So you can imagine a lot of these tools are not going to be used in an environment where the student doesn't have reliable internet access. So you have to find something that's going to work for them in those types of environments. So it's more based on the task, based on the environment and the student, and then you figure out what tool would work in all 3.
That's great that you do that assessment because that'd be a lot of wasted time.
Oh, yeah.
And Sree, with the iPhone.
Yes.
That's a game changer in the accessibility world, I believe. For me, at least it was. Tell us about the experience you had with students learning the iPhone.
Well, we get anywhere from someone who just got their brand new iPhone and have no clue what to do with it to someone who's used it but don't know all the gestures. So what we try to focus on is really teach the fundamentals of VoiceOver. That's predominantly what I try to do, is find things that make the journey of learning how to use it in a very simple learning process. We start by explaining the phone, the layout of the phone, what all these buttons do outside the phone, talk about the screen layout, and just start with simple navigation. We start with the 1 finger, swipe, tap, and then work ourselves all the way down to 4 fingers, and then go with the rotor, and then we start explaining the different apps, because everything on that screen with VoiceOver, it tells us what it is. So we have a very good understanding of what we touch. It tells us what we touch, so we can truly use the phone to all what it offers.
Mm-hmm. What's it like when you have a student realize that they're opening up a new world to themselves?
I think part of it is they feel the freedom. I've had students where this one person wanted to send a text message to her granddaughter, and that was her desire. And we worked on swipes, we worked on typing, and then eventually when she sent that first text message to her granddaughter, it was just an amazing feeling. I cannot put it into words how I felt and how she felt, how her daughter felt, and how the granddaughter felt. And so I always tell people it's not how fast we get to the finish line, it's the joy of the journey getting to the finish line.
Mm-hmm. That's really neat. I remember the first time I sent a response back by an email, and the kid that I sent it to said, "You have to be one of the slowest typers I've ever heard."
We always say it's not how fast, it's just getting to the end line and enjoying it.
To me, it just felt good to be connected in a sense of I'm connected to, this internet. This was back in 97, 98, so it was fairly new, but it seemed like I was now hip in a sense that I could do something. I mean, there were listservs and different types of communication apps that we were using at the time. We didn't have all this stuff. We didn't know what SMS and all that stuff was going to be coming down the line here that we use today without blinking an eye.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, there's not that much that the phone can't do now. It's amazing that this phone was more powerful than the ship that took people to the moon. And in this very small device, it does so many different things. It allows us to read. It allows us to understand what we're looking at. It gives us information. We're able to search just like a sighted person is able to do. So the phone is an extension of myself now.
I really like what you said about like building upon with the technology, because I feel like that's most of it. It's like you can teach somebody that, when you go into this app, you press this or you do this gesture, but they have to understand why they're doing it. And that's when it's going to be repeatable, is understanding what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it, rather than just you press this keystroke. And if they don't really understand why they're doing it, then yeah. And they do get faster. I had a student who, when I first started working with him, it took him a while to do the keystrokes and stuff. And then it was just like, it just started coming. And he was like getting through stuff really quickly. You could just hear him getting so much better. And he was so excited about it too. So yeah, I definitely agree with what you said about that.
I know, like for me, when I first learned how to use VoiceOver, I spent the first 2 weeks just learning my gestures. I didn't even want to learn how to use apps. Mm-hmm. And I'll go to these classes and people say, okay, I want to know how to create a contact. And I said, I'm only going to teach you how to learn to create a contact once you understand the gestures. Because it's very difficult to do something without understanding the basic gesture movements of the phone. And I always tell people, once you learn your gestures, you can pretty much do everything on the phone. So, you just got to be patient. I have a saying in my class when I teach, 2 peas in a pod is a very common phrase that we've heard before, right? 2 peas in a pod. And I say the pod, the POD is proficiency over your device. That's the pod. But in order to achieve that pod, you need to have the 2 Ps, which is practice and patience. And so I talk about that. I said, we're going to go as slow as we need to go because I want you to fully understand the fundamentals. And then eventually we'll learn how to be more efficient as we navigate.
That's good. I can see the t-shirts coming out now. 2 peas in a pod.
I should trademark it, right?
Practice and patience. Now, you both do volunteer work. I believe it's volunteer work. Cheryl, tell us about BITS.
Yeah, I became a BITS lifetime member actually at the beginning of last year. And it's a really good organization. They have a lot of different trainings, a lot of different knowledge. Like right now they're doing remote training. So like we went over JAWS, Tandem, and now tonight they're doing RIM. So they give you a lot of information, and I think that can also really help out with your career and getting into things.
How can people find out more about BITS?
I believe their address is bits.acb.org.
Yeah, we'll put a link for that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I found out about it, I went to look for it, and they have topics, and they covered a lot of different things. And some things are like 6 weeks long, one day a week, but like they did the NVDA thing for a while. Then they did this and that. So there's a lot of good information being shared.
Yeah.
They recently had HTML class, which was, I think it took like 6 months or something. It was a very long class, but it was very in-depth. They had a lot of number of students stuck with it. I think they had over 80 students that stuck with the whole program to learn HTML. I also agree with Cheryl. BITS is a great service that they offer. Lots of different things you can learn. I attend it. They have a Mac Bytes that I'm involved in. They're definitely a great resource.
Yeah, and they also have what they call basics with BITS. I think it's on like every other Saturday in the afternoon, but they have the archived as podcast too that you can find. But those things are really good as well. Like just if you're new to all that, like Jaws, it's really helpful. And I even tune in sometimes just to listen to see how other people are teaching different concepts. And sometimes I'll pick up on a keystroke or two that I either forgot about or maybe thought, hmm. So yeah, those are really good too.
And I think, Cheryl, you have a lifetime membership. I have an annual membership, which
Hmm.
I think is about $20 a year. So it's very reasonable membership fee. And what you get from it is going to get much more than what you would, try and learn on your own, because they do offer many different services on the technology side. It covers from the Mac to the phone to JAWS to NVDA to programming, all different types of technology. And they've done a really, really good job of really expanding that service or services.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sree, tell us a little bit about iBUG today.
So I've been with iBUG since about 2018, and they offer 25 different services each month. They have 3 core values, which is individual independence, social integration, and educational development. And within those 3 core values, these 25 different services offers those core values in different ways. So we do a lot of Mac classes. We do iPhone, mostly Apple, but we also offer the Amazon devices as well as Google devices. They offer a Mac class where you can sign up. It's a intro to Mac with VoiceOver. We also have a mentor program where if you just recently got a brand new iPhone, as I mentioned before, and you want to know how to use VoiceOver, we'll pair you up with one of our mentors and we'll give you the basic foundation on how to use VoiceOver. We'll give you some basic Siri commands as well as all the basic finger gestures so you can pretty much use the phone once you're done with the class. They also offer a movie night on Friday. It's an audio-described audio track. So if you like to watch movies, they offer those. And all the services are free. If any of those things are interested, definitely check out ibugtoday.org to get more information. And we also do every Monday night, if you have an iPhone and you want to know how to use VoiceOver, we offer a 2-hour open forum where you can ask any questions about how to use your iPhone, which you can find more information on the website.
Yeah, they keep quite a tight ship. You might have 30, 60 people on the call at one time, but they got rules and regulations. Only one person speaking at a time. The other thing is, and I do it all the time, if you check out the show notes, it'll list most of the topics that are talked about in the entire show. So if something catches your interest, check it out.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we do that is because all our sessions are recorded, so you can access it through any of the podcast platform or the A-Lady or on the website. So that's why we kind of try to keep a strict guide in that so that we can get a good recording. And one of the things that I'm also involved is on the cafe. That's where we take a very in-depth look at an app that's tied to your iOS. I call it my cradle to grave kind of I wouldn't say training, but just showing you how to use the app from start to end with all the bells and whistles that's behind that app.
Yeah, they're pretty thorough.
Yeah, we'll spend about anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half on that particular app, letting you know how it all works.
I also like at the end of the demo how you have open discussions so people who are attending the call can ask questions and find out more.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fundamental things that we have with this organization, which also attracted me, is it's a very open forum. We want to hear from you. We want to understand your questions. We'll try and get you the best answers. If we don't have the answers, we'll make sure we do our homework and try to get the answer the following week.
Cheryl, what got you interested in teaching?
I've always loved to teach. Like my kids, I've just always been a teacher. And I think for me, I really like what I'm doing because I work with a student for a while, from the beginning to the end. And I see that progress. It's like you hold their hand and then eventually you let go and then they keep backing up, and then eventually they can do it on their own. And that's kind of what I like about it is that, to see these people succeed. And in my previous role as a dietitian, half the time I would meet somebody and I would work with them for maybe 30 minutes and I would never see them again. So I never knew what happened to them. And I like to know what happens to my student and watching them succeed and learning what they need to learn. And a lot of students come to us and maybe they've had training before. And one of my friends who works at a college has noticed the same thing, but they'll come out of school and they know how to tab. They know how to get around the screen by tabbing, but they don't know how to do things more efficiently. Like one of my students didn't know how to send an email other than, tabbing over to the send button. And that takes a little bit to get there. So once I taught him Alt S or Control Enter or whatever keystroke he uses. He's like, wow, so just to kind of see that a lot of times when students come to you, they have this view that maybe it's going to be like super hard. And then you show them and they're like, wait, that's it? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, but I was expecting, like, so.
Tab.
Yeah, like that is going to be like, launching the nuclear codes or something, but it's just, a keystroke here or there, and then they move on. And I don't know. I just like seeing them succeed.
How about you, Sree?
Yeah, for me, it started when I was in one community call. It was actually in person. And a lady said, I have an iPhone, but I have no idea how to use it. And I was just thinking to myself, well, I kind of know how to use the iPhone. Maybe I could help someone. And then I was at the Martin Luther King Library just in a Monday night tech support where, people would come in and ask questions. At that time, there was a professor from South Carolina, and he was just observing me. And he said, Sree, maybe you should think about teaching this. Kind of mentioned that to me after the session. And I said, I'm not really sure about teaching a whole session, And he goes, I think you can. And then I talked about maybe a simple syllabus on how to teach the class. And then I brought that to the library and they said, yeah, this sounds good. And that's how it all started. Just going out there and showing what I knew, which was not a lot at the time, but I had a little curriculum of how to do VoiceOver, the gestures that I learned before. And that's how it all started. And then it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And it led me to places like iBUG Today. It led me to you and Blind Abilities and other places around the Washington, D.C. area.
Yeah, I think that bug about teaching, that something that's inside you is realizing that you have something and you can help someone on their journey by sharing it.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened to me with woodworking. I went to a training center and they had woodworking, but I told them, I said, I gave that up. I don't do that. So I didn't do it. And then I wanted to get refreshed back into my skills and stuff. So I went to another training center and I had to take woodworking. 10 minutes after I was there, I was playing with the click ruler. I started showing the student next to me how it worked. Mm-hmm. And then I was showing another student another thing. Then I realized I could use this to measure. I could cut on this. I could do that. All that was just coming back to me because something just clicked and happened to be the click ruler. So that led me to teaching. 4 months later, I was hired to teach the class because they saw that teaching that was in me that was just being busted open. And this was in a blindness situation where, I was fairly new to it, but as soon as you don't change, whether you're sighted or blind, if you have that teaching thing in you, you're still a teacher no matter where you go. So I'm glad you guys found it.
Yeah, I think you said that really well there. To me, it's just when you see the end result of something that wasn't there in the beginning and you just see how they grew and developed something and they're able to do these things on their own. Now I truly understand when you hear teachers say there's so much joy in their class or just being a teacher. Mm-hmm. I'm not a certified teacher or anything, but just that small aspect of joy that I get seeing somebody go through this process and learn VoiceOver, it brings joy to me. I can't put it in words. I just love it. And I'm glad that I have this opportunity to do it.
Especially in our community, because I feel like a lot of times people just never get those resources. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really unfortunate. Like I mentioned, graduating high school and not doing anything beyond tabbing.
Yeah, I always tell myself, I give so little, but I get so much back. Just I'm giving a little bit of my time and my skill that I know, but how it impacts someone else in a much larger scale, it's a great feeling.
I was at a convention one time and a gentleman that was, 17 majors or whatever, credentials to his name or whatever, was speaking. And they said that they wanted to create a manual for teachers. And I just sat back and went, okay, this guy's missing the boat. And my point is why I thought that was I may have taught 100, 200 students, but I think the manual for each student is different. Mm-hmm. Not one person did I teach the same way at all. And I don't even know what the framework of that is. I think the framework is just the natural thing that you recognize the student where they're at and you start there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You talk to them for a little bit in the beginning and you kind of can figure out, where their skill set is. And, some people will say, Sree, I'll never be able to do that. And I said, we're not going to use the word never. We're just going to keep trying and trying and trying. And eventually you'll succeed. A lot of this finger gestures is just muscle memory. that you don't even think when you do it, it just eventually becomes muscle memory. It's like my sister, when she went from an iPhone with the home button without the home button, she goes, I'm never going to learn this. I said, just give me 10 minutes. I am so sure within 10 minutes you'll figure this out. And, in the beginning, she was like frustrated. It's not working. I said, it's all right. Keep going. And about the 4th or 5th minute mark, it just starts happening, it just naturally happens. So a lot of these things, you kind of work with someone and they'll say they can't do it, and you give them the positive reinforcement. Yeah, you'll be able to do it. Don't worry. We'll just keep practicing and practicing. And then eventually they get it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a coach in a way, or just like band. You ever heard students when they first start band class and they try to play and it just sounds horrible. And then by the end of the year, it's like music, right? Like it's something you actually want to hear, but
yeah, the first day of recorder class.
Oh, yeah,
I think one of the things I learned about the iPhone right off the bat was do not try and learn the iPhone while eating Cheetos.
Mm-hmm.
Cheetos. Are you going to elaborate on that?
Oh, no. It's like, I remember one time I was listening to the thing, the Cheetos were sitting there, so I ate a few Cheetos, and I went to make a swipe. Doesn't work. And it doesn't help if you try and lick your fingers, because then it's just a mess.
Yeah.
That was back, I think it was a 3 or 4S. I can't remember.
One thing about VoiceOver also, we learn these gestures, but it's also so important to listen. I always tell students, your ears are your eyes, and you have to listen, then react. A lot of people react and listen, and I always tell them, you got to listen, because VoiceOver is giving us so many clues to let you know what kind of movement to perform. And if you just listen to it and really pay attention, because not only it gives us our verbal information, it also gives us sound alerts. Every gesture that we perform on the phone, the sound has a unique meaning. And when I'm teaching the class, I'm actually listening for the sound because I want to see if they perform the gesture correctly or not. And so I let them know that not only are you going to get some verbal, but you're also going to get some sound hints too. And so definitely the important thing I let people know is listen, then react.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things for us. People can learn on their own. I learned on my own, but I think sometimes somebody pointing some of these things out to you, because our brains are so good at filtering. If it doesn't make sense, it just filters it out. But maybe that information does make sense. Maybe it is important. And then we can, if we teach them, like on the Mac, for example, there's a specific sound that it makes when you get to something you can interact with. And if you don't know what that sound is, or you just kind of filter that out, that's giving you like that really crucial piece of information. So I teach my students that all the time. Like when we get to web pages, earlier today, I was actually working on this with one of my students. When you go to press one of the keys, like H, and nothing happens, and it doesn't say no more headings on the page, or JAWS doesn't give you any type of feedback, I'm like, there's probably a pop-up. Let's see. And almost all the time there is. So sometimes it's just, what do you expect to hear? And if you're not hearing that, then there must be something else going on. And just kind of hearing that and then start to troubleshoot.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I know on the Mac, when I teach people, I don't just give them the keyboard shortcuts. I show them the long path. So I want them to fully understand the flow of where you're going, because there is some logic to all of this navigation. And if you can kind of understand it, then the whole process will be a lot easier down the road instead of just hitting keyboard commands. Eventually, you will get to the keyboard commands, but also understand the process of getting from start to end.
Yeah. Definitely. The understanding why am I doing this, I think is so important, because anybody can just tell you to press this, this, and this, but why are you pressing that, and that? What is it doing? And how can you use that somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah, transferable skills.
And sometimes it's just like, you might not know, but like, for example, in Microsoft, a lot of the commands you can do in one application, you can do in another. So like, for example, you might not know how to make comments in PowerPoint, but you know how to make them in Word. So you can just, Control-Alt-M, let's see if it works. And sometimes it does. And sometimes, like, we were doing something in Teams one day and they're like, well, how do you do in the meeting? I'm like, I just started pressing buttons. I'm like, well, this is how you do it in Outlook. Let's see if it works. And Control-Shift-Q works. So this is just trying it out. What do you know from other applications, and try it here? I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is it doesn't work.
Yeah, being able to self-troubleshoot and problem solve, that's key. Good job. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on and talking about teaching, because that's one of the first things that I did when I was losing my eyesight. I wanted to find someone to help me learn the tools of the trade, and you guys are doing a great job at what you're doing, and you're with some great organizations that are doing it. So thank you very much.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Such a great time having Cheryl and Sree on the show. Be sure to check the show notes, because I'm putting all the links to everything mentioned in this show. Not everything, but mostly everything. And plus, I'll put 2 links there from the previous shows that I interviewed Cheryl and Sree separately, so check it out. For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com. And if you want to leave some feedback, give us some suggestions, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. I want to thank you for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see through
each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the reality of blind abilities.
and the realities of blind abilities.
blind abilities.